The most popular questions have been chosen to be asked during this panel. As a result, we will not be taking questions unless we have time at the end. If you have a question that you would like to ask, tweet it or post it on Facebook with a hashtag UCDPHSA14, and it will be integrated live into our panel today. Now, we'll allow each of our distinguished panelists to introduce themselves from left to right, giving his or her name and the institution they represent.
Kelly Williford. I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment at Western University of Health Sciences.
My name is Jim Walter. I'm the Director of Admissions at Midwestern University in Glendale, Arizona.
My name is Grace Landel. I'm the Program Director of the Touro University Joint MSPAS-MPH program, which is the PA program.
And now we will have each of the panelists take 2 to 3 minutes to tell us about the program offered at their institution, starting with Ms. Grace Landel.
So our program is in Vallejo, California, so it's down the road from here. And we have a mission to educate PA students who also have an MPH. We want our students to work with underserved populations, and so we're looking to recruit people from underserved populations or applicants who have demonstrated interest in working with underserved populations, and we're really interested in increasing access of care for underserved populations. Our admissions criteria, we have a cumulative science and the cumulative GPA and cumulative science GPA of 2.75 or greater, although our competitive applicants usually have a GPA of over 3.0. We focus primarily, although not completely, on the last 30 units of coursework, so we will look to see, we look to see that people have improved. We know that, if you went to college when you were 18 and kind of goofed off that first year, that takes a lot of 4.0s to overcome that 1.8 from your freshman year. So we don't hold that against you, but we do expect to see people improving in their GPA because it's a very rigorous program. We don't require the GRE, and we do require a bachelor's degree. Our minimum course requirements are 8 semester hours of chemistry and biology, both with labs, 4 semester hours of anatomy, physiology, or they can be combined where you'd need 8, in micro, and statistics. And all the prerequisite courses have to be completed with a C or better. We don't take C minuses as a grade. And we also require a minimum of 500 hours of healthcare experience. Although, again, competitive applicants have usually over 1,000 hours. And our competitive candidates have over 20 hours of shadowing of a PA in various settings. One of the things about our program, we are the only program in the United States. There's over 187 PA programs now, and we are the only program where all of our students get a master's in public health as well as their Master of Science in PA studies.
My name is Jim Walter. Our program is in Glendale, Arizona. That's the program that I'm Director of Admissions over. It's a 27-month master's degree. We recruit from throughout the U.S., so very national applicant pool. For our program last year, we got almost 2,000 applications through CASPA, so very competitive program. Our average GPA was about a 3.6. Last year, we do require the GRE. All of our prereqs have to have a C or better. Gosh, I'm trying to think of what else to say about our program. It's hot in Glendale just like it is here today. Our class size is 90 students, so it's a relatively large class, but we only interview about 250 to fill that class. It is a very selective interview process for our program. That's kind of the biggest hurdle to get over is getting that invite. It is a full file review for that interview invitation. We don't have a minimum or a max number of hours that are required, but about 1,000 hours to be competitive is something you want to shoot for.
So I'll go back and add and respond to that also. So we had last year almost 1,700 applications. We do a supplemental application, and we interview between 200 and 250, and we take 40.
So Western University of Health Sciences is located in Pomona, California. It's about 30 miles east of Los Angeles. And it's beautiful there year-round. We had almost 2,000 applications for the program last year, which seats 98 students each year. Competitive GPA is going to be similar to a lot of the other schools that you're looking at. It's going to be around 3.6, so it is competitive. We don't have a requirement for clinical hours, which is unique compared to some other schools. So we focus in on your GPA and also your community service. Those are big parts for us. We also look for individuals that are looking to serve underserved populations. In Pomona, there's a large population that surrounds our campus, and so obviously we strive to serve that community, and so we look for individuals that also have that same goal in mind. There's a ton of prereqs. I'm not going to list them all. I would just recommend that you look at each individual school. There might be some small idiosyncrasies between what those, like we require genetics kind of thing. So just look at the schools and what they are requiring so that you're doing your best to meet the requirements for all of the different schools that you are wanting to attend.
All right, thank you. I would also like to remind the audience that we will, if we have time, we'll be taking questions at the end. So please hold off on your questions until then. Now the next question will be directed at Ms. Grace Landel. What are important factors to consider when deciding which PA program to apply to?
So I think there are several things that you can look at when you're looking at a program. I think it's good to look at their mission statement because you want to know if they fit. I think the best advice I had when I was applying to PA school a long time ago was, if you go to the programs that are doing well, and you can look at all PA programs are required to post their pass rate on the national certifying exam. Many of them have information on nutrition, those kinds of things. But really look, is this the right program for you? And that's really important because if it's not the right fit for you, then you're not going to do well there. Again, our program, all of our students are going to an MPH. If people are not interested in public health, then we're not the right program for them. And that's okay because there are a lot of other programs.
All right, thank you. And for Mr. James Walter, what do you look for in your applicant during the interview?
You really have to come to our interview process prepared to be a little surprised. It's not only a panel of interviewers, but you're in there with a group of interviewees also. So definitely have that teamwork model in mind. Some of the questions are designed to put you into those teamwork kind of settings to see how well you work with each other. It's something that in the PA profession, you're constantly, being pulled in a lot of different directions. So we want to see how you're going to handle that in an interview setting. So it's not just you individually in front of a panel. So it does many times put you into situations that are difficult to prepare for.
Thank you. And for Ms. Kelly Williford, what is the biggest mistake that you have seen from an applicant?
Applying when you're not ready. I think it's pretty evident whether you're listening to the panel now or the one earlier that it is competitive. And so I think the biggest mistake we see are applicants who are so eager, and we understand that, to get started. You want to get started so that you can get out there and start on those rotations and be a PA. But applying when you are truly not ready or at your best is a disadvantage. So I would say that's one of the biggest mistakes that we see is just you're not ready yet.
Can I add to that also? On the CASPA application or on the application, if you're applying to a program that doesn't belong to CASPA, is not explaining yourself in your application. I felt badly when I've talked to somebody and they said, well, I've done this, that, or anything. And I said, did you put that in your application? Did you explain that? And they said, well, no. Well, we have too many, we're not going to be looking for nuances in people's applications. We don't have time. We have too many applications. It may not even get to somebody to look at that. And so kind of what I always tell people to do is, if your grandmother's still alive, have her read everything that you wrote because she has no clue about what it is you want to do. And if it makes sense to her, it will make sense to us.
Ms. Williford, did you have anything to continue?
No, that's
okay.
Great, yeah.
And back to Ms. Grace Landel, can you explain what rolling admissions is?
So rolling admissions is where, as applications come in, we have a rolling admission process. And so as the way we run ours is as we get applications come in, we review them, and we start interviewing. And so as we interview, we will accept people as we go along. And so what that can mean is if people wait till the very last day of our open cycle and to apply, the class already might, by the time we actually review those applications, the class may already be full. But you have to balance that, so when you're going to apply, you have to balance that with, are you ready yet? Have you finished that last class? Have you done those last couple things that make you a more competitive applicant? So you're always balancing it with being as competitive as you can and, as soon as you can.
All right, I will open the next question to the whole panel. You guys can take turns answering. When you see a primary application packet that contains a below average GPA, based on your school's averages, what are you looking for in the rest of their application to invite them to receive a secondary and interview?
I mean, for our programs, the GRE score can help, balance that maybe slightly lower GPA. Definitely having a lot of clinically patient-related experience can help. Having a lot of extra curriculars, have a great personal statement. I think that's a good point that was made, is have somebody who knows nothing about a PA application process read your personal statement. Make sure that maybe an English major reads your personal statement. That's one of the things also that can doom your application. Misspellings in your application. Be sure that everything is correct. That's something that is the expectation. You're dealing with admissions committees that are very detail-oriented people. And so you're going to want to make sure that you've got every detail covered in that application.
So we do a holistic review. So we actually, the GPA is just one part of the application. All our minimums, our admissions office actually looks at those things first. If the boxes all can be checked, those applications are then forwarded on to the program then reviews them. So we go back and we look, we know that the GPA has been looked at, the prereqs are done, all those kinds of things, and then we look at essays, we look at the community service, we look at what kind of clinical experience you've had. We do look at, was it improving GPA? So again, we have a minimum, but we look at, our program, people have said this, that PA programs are academically rigorous. And so you have to be prepared to do that. But on top of that, our students are getting a second master's degree at the same time. So it's double rigorous. So that people really need, we look at it to make sure that we think people can be successful. We try not to set people up for failure. We don't see that there's any reason for that. There's enough people. So if we don't think somebody's going to make it academically based on looking at the things that they've said, barriers that they think they may see to success, and kind of an academic track record, then we are likely not to invite somebody for an interview.
I think it's important when you're looking at that GPA component of it is really having a good understanding that you know the content well. You need to have a strong foundation going into these programs because they are so rigorous and so fast-paced that it is difficult to need any type of remediation coming in. And so that's really where that GPA focus, yes, it's a competitive side of it as well, but that's really what we're looking for is that preparedness. And so we also do a holistic review. I think a majority of the programs do look at all of the different components that you have. Yes, we do focus in on your GPA, but we do look at your community service. Again, it's a big part of who we are on our campus, and I think Grace was great in mentioning earlier to check out the mission statements of the schools that you're looking at. And also, if you have an opportunity to interact with those campuses in any capacity, it's important as well, just so that you get a feel of what the culture is on campus. You're spending a lot of time and money there. You want it to be a good fit. Imagine yourself being happy there. And so when you're looking at your overall application, there's no secret. It's every person is individual. Each person is going to bring something unique, and that's what we're looking for. So yeah, we are going to look at that GPA. We're going to look at your community service, if you've had any leadership opportunities. So not just that you were involved in a club, but were you on the board in a club? That takes a lot of time and effort. And to still be successful in your studies and have all these extracurricular activities shows that you can handle having that kind of schedule in that graduate environment. And that's really what you're doing now, is preparing yourself for that environment. And so those are different things that we're going to look at as well. So we're going to look at your community service, your leadership, all the different components. That's why I think, again, it was great that Grace said, be very clear on your application and spend time on it. Spend a lot of time on it. I know it's a big time investment to do that, but it's worth it. And so those are components that you're going to look at. And be sure that you have a clear understanding of what those schools are looking for. And take an opportunity to show who you are as an individual.
When you're looking at, if there's reasons why you had a lower GPA, explain them in your personal statement. That's your one opportunity to explain who you are, why you are who you are.
All right, and we'll open this another question to the whole panel again. We can start from left to right this time. What do you think about the hook that students usually start with in their personal statements?
The hook.
Yeah, don't start with "it's a dark and stormy night."
I think with the personal statement, the biggest thing that I think of, and I read personal statements for other programs, don't write what you think I want to read. Mm-hmm. Write what you want to tell me. That's what I want to read. Don't try to come up with this fluffy stuff. When you think about who your readers are, a lot of them are faculty who are teaching all day and reading during their, I don't want to call it free time. That's a horrible word.
Yeah,
but
we don't have free time.
They don't have free time. But they're fitting in these individuals that on the admissions committees are also faculty. They also may be in clinical rotations. So there's other things that they do. And so be cognizant of that. And just be yourself. I'm not a big hook person, but that's just me. I mean...
Well, and be sure that at some point in your personal statement, you mention your desire to be a physician assistant. You would be amazed at how many personal statements students never even mention that. I know it's sometimes you feel like that's a given, that obviously why would you go through all this trouble and spend all this money if you didn't want to be a PA, but you still need to mention that in your personal statement.
My faculty, some of them hate the hook, some of them are neutral, and some of them like it. So, yeah, choose for yourself.
Okay. And for Mr. James Walter, how would you compare a person with good GPA with less experience and a person with lower GPA and more experiences?
You know, it's part of the process is not really comparing one against the other. I think that's where, you know, we don't sort of put everybody in a bowl and see who rises to the top. It's an individual, you know, holistic file review, and everybody has issues in their application. No one has the perfect application. That's, you know, you're going to have to overcome those. You're going to have to address those. So if you've got maybe a lower GPA, be sure that, you know, the last few semesters you've taken full-time coursework, taken multiple science courses within a single semester. You know, you can do things to overcome that. If you don't have a whole lot of clinical experience, be prepared to talk very intelligently about the clinical experience that you do have. Try to talk, you know, that exposure that you've gotten. I always tell applicants that you know, you have to have enough experience to speak intelligently about the profession. For some folks, that's 200 hours. For some folks, that might be 2,000 hours before they get to that point. So you have to kind of address those things in your application. I don't think it's, you know, for us in admissions, it's not a cutoff line of this person made it over that line, this person didn't, in terms of comparing applicants.
Thank you. And to Ms. Williford, is your program open to all undergraduate majors? And if so, which majors are the most common?
Yes. We actually like to see non-science majors apply. Make sure you have a strong science background, though. There's a caveat to that. But I would say a majority of the applicants do have a science major, so biology, chemistry, just because of the number of requirements, science requirements that are required to apply for the program. That's the best way for you to obtain those. And so I would say that would be a majority of them. But we like to see individuals that come from a non-science background. You have something unique and different and a different perspective to offer the class. But again, having said that, you still need to have a strong science and show a rigorous schedule that you can handle that kind of curriculum coming in. So,
Thank you. I will open this next question to the whole panel again. We can start with Ms. Grace Landel this time. What would you recommend that an applicant do if this is their second time applying?
I think most programs have, if you should explain what you've done differently. In our program, on our supplemental, we actually have a specific question for applicants for you to say that. And in terms of addressing what it is that you've done differently or done more of, is explaining how you came to the decision of that's what you needed to do. So it's some self-reflection on why you think you didn't get in last time or get an interview, and then what are the next steps that you're doing to work on those things.
Yeah, self-analysis is very important. If, putting the same application out again year after year after year, if it's not successful the first time, it's more than likely not going to be successful the second, third. You want to be improving. You want to look at what are areas where maybe I need to get more experience. Maybe I need to improve my science GPA. Maybe I, need to do some more voluntary shadowing. Maybe I need to rewrite my personal statement. You want to be able to constantly improve that application, and you really have to take that pessimistic opinion through that application cycle, because if you're waiting until the end, there's not going to be any time to make any impact or to do anything. And that's where we see applicants where, they'll take that year off, not be successful, come back the second year with the exact same application because they waited to see if they got in.
And I just want to just build off of that, because I think that that's a big part of what you need to consider when you apply. I say after you click submit, after you've done all your secondaries, if those are required, take the weekend off, pat yourself on the back, and then get back started on Monday. Going into a healthcare field, you are a lifelong learner. It's never going to stop, and you're always going to be looking to grow. And so you want to show that on your application. So don't stop doing all of those things. I think that's great advice. It's unfortunate we see applicants who rush to do something in spring as they prepare to apply again, instead of seeing something consistent throughout the entire time. So once you submit it, really be honest with yourself and unbiased in looking at your application. You guys are all really, really smart. So really look at your application and be honest with yourself about where you need to pull up on those strengths and where your weaknesses are to build on those. And don't forget where your strengths are too. I think you need to keep building on that as well. It's important. So just don't stop. Keep working at it.
Okay, and now, Mr. Walter, do you recommend certain certification prior to applying to your institution, such as an EMT or RN?
I don't necessarily recommend certification, but it definitely gets you a higher level of patient care. That's one of the things that it's going to be an advantage if you do get it. But I think that is something that you have to weigh in terms of if you're still in undergrad. Do you have enough time to still get good grades and get a certification and then go use that certification? That's the other thing. If you do go to that point of becoming an EMT or a CNA, be sure that you then work as an EMT or a CNA. It's not just about getting the certification so that you can list it on your application. You want to then show that, yes, I then spent 500, 1,000 hours as that.
Thank you. Ms. Landel, Can you tell us what an MSPAS is?
So I'm going to go a little broader first, is that the PA programs where you're going to get a master's degree, they all have different master's degrees. And so you're going to get different alphabet soup after your name. So an MSPAS is a Master of Science in Physician Assistant Studies. And that's the master's, that's what our university gives as a student, gives as a graduate. I don't know what for your guys' programs,
It's the same.
It's
yeah.
the same?
Yeah, we're just primary.
Yeah. But you'll see also a Master in PA Studies, so they don't have the science, so it's an MPAS. Trying to think of some of the other ones we see, but there's a lot of different ones out there, but it's just a master's degree, and it's institution dependent on what they call it.
Thank you. And we'll open this question to the next panel, the whole panel, starting with Ms. Williford. How much do extracurriculars weigh on the application, and does it matter what kind of extracurriculars you do?
I think that's a great question. For us, it does matter. I said it before, and I'll just repeat it, that we do look at your extracurricular activities and your community service. We actually like to see them be both clinical and non-clinically based. So we want to see, of course, if you have an opportunity to do where you can serve your community in that capacity, that's great. But it's also great to see things that are focused in something different. So, Habitat for Humanity, or working with the homeless community, or whatever it is that you are passionate about, that is what we want to see. And I think that quality versus quantity is helpful. So do something that you're truly passionate about. Maybe you have 4 or 5 things that you really love, and do those things over a long period of time. You're going to get so much more reward out of it. It's much better to see that than 15 things that you've done for a short period of time, because you want it to look like you've got this long list of things that you've done, but there's no content, there's no meat to it. And you're not really going to have much to talk about, should you be asked, because you didn't really have much of an experience. But doing something over a long period of time, there's so many things that can happen during that, both on a personal level or larger than that you're going to have experiences that you're going to learn and grow from. And so for us, we like to see that wide range. But the biggest thing for it is, don't do what you think we want you to do what you love.
And even seek out maybe a leadership role in those experiences. It's a great opportunity to, add to that experience. If, quality over quantity is very important. Don't just throw a whole bunch of stuff on your application and check that box and say, okay, I'm done. It does need to be something that you are going to gain something from it.
Life's too short to be doing things that you're doing just to check a box. You should be doing things exactly because you're passionate about doing it. It's always interesting to me when I see community service, and it looks like the person went, oh, they want community service. Let's see, I'm going to apply. And they start, they started in March of that year, the year they applied. They've never done any community service before. They've never, maybe not even thought about it before. And so looking at it as it's something I have to do. And don't do things because you think it's something you have to do, but it's because something you really want to do. The other thing is, I think when you look at community service and when you look at extracurricular activities, that sports, being on a sports team, you can't, if you're playing team sports, you have an idea of what it is to be on a team. Many people do things that they don't realize that is community service, or they're helping their community. They're tutoring, they're a big brother, big sister, and they've been doing this for years. And they go, oh yeah, well, I just kind of thought everybody did that. And the answer is no, they don't. So what kinds of things are you doing to make the world a better place? And are you doing it because you want to make the world a better place, or because you think that we want to see that you think that that's an important thing to do? And if people ask you questions about it, if you get an interview, it's pretty obvious when you're doing it because you think it's something that you should be doing, not because it's something you want to be doing. So find that thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, to the whole panel, are there any misconceptions about the application process that you feel the need to be clarified?
I think the biggest misconception a lot of applicants have is that as soon as you hit submit in CASPA, we then immediately get your information. It takes 4 to 6 weeks, and that's after CASPA has gotten all of your transcripts. So be sure that you're on that CASPA website finding out at what point you get into verification, which that only starts once all of your transcripts are in. Even that one course you took at that community college, they need that transcript also. I think a lot of applicants don't understand that time frame it takes for the verification process to happen to get to us. If you've got a secondary application, if you haven't gotten it, it's because they haven't gotten your information yet. So be sure that you're on top of that process and don't call us 3 months later and ask where my application is because you didn't follow up with it.
And then depending on the institution, so there's a delay from when you submit to CASPA, letting the institution know that you're done. And then many programs, then the admissions office does something, and then, and looks through things, and then you'll get a supplemental, if the program has a supplemental, and then it goes to the committee to review. So we're talking multiple steps. It's not a one.
And I think, just to touch on both of those, is don't make the assumption that what we do on our process is the same as what other institutions do, because we all have little bit of differences on how we do that. So for example, we don't send invitations for the secondary. It's available online. So you're going to be waiting and waiting, thinking you're going to get an invitation when it's right there. So educate yourself on what each step of what each institution is doing. I know that sounds cumbersome, but it's also less stressful for you. And apply early. It just makes your life so much less stressful.
So review the application, the programs you should know the programs you're going to apply to. And so that's knowing the program's website and knowing the admissions website, which may be different, so that you have really a good understanding of everything that that you need to have done.
Don't ever hesitate to ask questions. Much rather you ask than for you to make that assumption and find out that it was the wrong one.
Thank you. Again, to the whole panel, starting with Ms. Williford, how would you advise a student who is uncertain about which health profession to pursue, PA versus MD or NP versus PA?
Shadow. Go out and talk with those professionals. How else are you going to know what you want to do unless you go experience it? That would be my recommendation, because there's not just the MD field, there's the DO field. So there's other opportunities. There's podiatric medicine. There are so many things to consider in a healthcare field that really do your research about the institutions that you're looking at. See what else they have to offer. We have a lot between the three of us that are here today. And shadow, talk with individuals that already are in that profession and find out why they chose it. Talk with current students in those programs and find out why they chose it. Just educate yourself, but I think immersing yourself is going to be helpful.
Even if it's to rule out the profession, it's a good idea. You want to be sure this is the right decision for you. This is not something that you want to get halfway into and go, boy, I really wish I had done something else. All the programs out there are not designed for you to move around back and forth. This isn't like an undergrad major that you can change halfway through. Once you start into a PA program, your goal should be focused on finishing that and becoming a PA. You don't want to have second thoughts.
I agree with everything they've said.
Okay. What characteristics are essential and valuable to be a PA in your particular field? Anyone can start.
Could you repeat the question?
What characteristics are essential and valuable to be a PA in the particular field?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think you need to be interested in people. You want to be able to talk to people because you have to interview people. You want to have a little bit of liking being a detective because you got to figure stuff out. And because as PAs, we're dependent practitioners, although we work autonomously, you need to be able to be a team member, work with other people, and also be an advocate for your patient. So, so you need to be able to advocate for yourself as well as advocate for others.
I think having a drive, You know, it's a very challenging profession in that position, and it's a great one. But I think that's a big part of it, is just knowing what you want and going for it, and not being intimidated by it, and taking however long it takes to get where you want to go, and that takes that dedication and drive. I think those are big characteristics as well.
Yeah, being a lifelong learner, it's definitely a profession where you're constantly challenged to stay up to date and to learn more information.
And obviously wanting to help people. So, I mean, that's kind of a given, right?
And to Mr. Walter, how do applicants get letters of recommendations when they have been out of school doing clinical hours for a few years?
Well, hopefully you have built up a relationship with those faculty members if you're going to have to go back a couple years later. Hopefully before you left, you knew enough about the desire to go to the PA, a program that you arranged for those letters before you left campus. Obviously if you're out working and, getting a practitioner letter, that shouldn't be a problem because they should be there. But hopefully you're able to, have developed that relationship with that science faculty member, that it's not going to be a burden to then go back and jog their memory about who you were and in their class. That's one of the things that you want to focus on while you're still in those classes, is going in and talking to those faculty members and developing that relationship, so it's not a shot in the dark when you come in and say, hey, I need a letter of recommendation.
Thank you. Now we will open the floor to questions, but please state your question clearly, because I have to repeat it so that audiences back home can hear the question.
How current do your science classes have to be?
The question was, how current do your science classes have to be?
Some programs are going to require to have a time limit on some of the courses, and so again, it's going to be program dependent. Our program, you have to have had anatomy and physiology within 5 years of matriculation, so when school starts.
Yeah, we don't have any deadline for your coursework expiring, but that's something that you don't want to let it get too far back in the past, because that is going to be a concern. If you've been out of school for 10 years, are you going to be able to jump into a graduate level science-based program? That's going to be tough.
Yeah, you don't want to go in, again, I said it before, but you don't want to go in needing remediation. So even if that's to refresh yourself, and for us, many of our science courses, it's less than 7 years prior to matriculation. Just check the websites of the schools that you're applying to.
My name's Liz. I have 2 questions. The first one's kind of like a day-to-day questions. So, what are PAs referred to in practice? And then the second.
Can we just start with one question? So the question was, what are on a day-to-day basis, what are PAs referred to?
Are you talking about how do our patients refer to us? My patients call me Grace. I don't.
I think a lot of times the patients don't even know you're a PA, a doctor, and an RN. It's not really a job title, I guess. But yeah, if they are going to refer to themselves, I'm sure they refer to themselves as a physician assistant.
I mean, yeah, if you're asking about the professional title. And one of the things, it's very important in the profession that the patients understand that we're not a physician. And so we do that education pretty frequently with patients, although now there's a lot more PAs in the country, and so people have a better sense of that. But we do a lot of education. But some people just, I guess I'm unclear if you were asking about what our professional title is, or how do they address us when they see us.
I mean, like in the field, doctor so-and-so or so-and-so. Is it physician assistant so-and-so?
Yeah, sometimes a little overhead page for PA Landel.
Okay, you can ask your second question.
The second part is, have you encountered like resistance or a lack of like trust
So the question was, have you, could you repeat that?
I can answer it. So the question was, I think because I have answered it since I'm the PA, is that have I had resistance from patients because I'm a PA? I have had a couple of times, not that frequently, and I should say that I've been a PA for 30 years. And I had one patient who, partly because she had had a concussion, and I was about to sew up a laceration on her chin. She was an elderly woman who had stepped on the accelerator rather than the brake and ran into the bank. And I was explained who I was. What I was going to be doing is I was going to repair her laceration, and I was just about to numb her up, and she grabbed my hand and said, "Well, isn't the doctor going to come and do this?" So it's like, take off my now non-sterile glove and go back and explain again what I'm doing, and that it was okay, but I would be happy to get the physician if that was better. She said, no, you seem nice enough, you can do it. And then she apologized the next day. And then very rarely, I think, and usually the staff at the front desk I've done outpatient in both rural and urban family practice, and also staffed an ER as in my rural practice. And people were very good about saying, you're going to be seeing Grace Landel. She's a physician assistant. She does many things that the physician does. And when I go in, I always explain again, same thing, who I am. And if they have a problem with that, I'm happy to let them to find one of the physicians to see them. The only other time that I really had a thing was more of an issue that I was a woman. It was a young high school football player, and he wasn't really excited about me doing his sports physical. But when he found out all the providers that day were women, he kind of went, you might as well do it. So.
Thank you.
As of late, I've seen an old dichotomy of community medicine and public health versus individual medicine sort of start to melt away, which makes sense, and I think it really resonates with the overarching philosophy of the PA being dedicated to the underserved, things like that, where it's really a big part of it. Do you see that, and I think that you'll be a little bit biased against the MPH part, but do you see that beginning to be more integrated into your programs, and maybe a shift towards that involvement in more community health aspects in the future for the profession?
Is there a way you can condense the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In solution, do you see public health becoming a larger component of the role of the PA?
So has public health become a larger component of the role of the PA? Well, it's interesting in the latest standards of the latest standards for accreditation for PA programs, which all PA programs have to meet, is that public health was added in as a new standard. So all programs do some specifically address public health. Since programs are generalist programs, really, and again, as a family practice PA, going to work at it, be the program director of a program where all of our students get an MPH, I didn't realize how much of what I did and what I knew actually was public health based. So I think there has always been that in PA programs, but I think it's more explicit now.
Yeah, I would agree with it. That definitely is, I don't know if it's trending that way, but I think that's the reality of how PAs are going to be practicing.
I think not just in that capacity as well, but also just in the entire team-based approach and that One Health approach towards patient care, and being integrated and collaborating with other professions is really moving that way as well.
We'll get a question from the back.
How would you view like a letter of recommendation that maybe was from a professor where you took the course with them and didn't do particularly well in, something that maybe was a struggle for you, but you put in a lot of time and tried to improve over the period of the semester?
So the question was, how would you view a letter of recommendation from a professor whose class you took and you didn't do so well in?
I have a general comment about reference letters. Is when you choose carefully who you're going to ask for your reference letters, And when you ask them, will they write I would not ask them, can you write me a reference letter? I would ask them can you write me a good reference letter? And that is a big difference. And so one of the things, if you were going to ask somebody in the fact that you struggled, there's going to be some of the areas you're not going to be checked on as highly, but you want to know, are they going to be able to give a good kind of summation of who you are and their perspective on whether or not you would be successful in the profession or in the schooling.
And I think that's what you want to be careful with. If that's what you're trying to go for, is you're trying to show the admissions committee that you had a challenge and you met that challenge, be careful about how you go about doing that so that it doesn't turn out in a negative way, but that it does look positive. So I would just be careful with that.
Yeah, and the one thing you do want to avoid is just the generic, bland reference letter. We get lots and lots of those kind of letters. So certainly if you think you have that, relationship with that faculty member that you think they're going to give you a good letter, and exactly ask them that and give them the opportunity to not write you a letter. Because a lot of times if they're incredibly busy, if they don't really feel comfortable writing you a good letter, give them that opportunity to then not write you a letter.
If they say, why don't you write it and I'll just sign it? I would not do that. No, it's happened.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're looking at a large, like 400-person biology course that you took, I mean, really, a lot of those letters read as, you could have just been a number to them, and there's not a lot of information in there, and a lot of them are actually not that useful.
And there has been times where it was so evident they were copying and pasting names and they didn't pay attention, and that person's name was at the top of it, but somebody else's name was at the bottom of it.
Or the gender was wrong.
I've read those.
Yeah, and
How do you take credit on that?
And don't go for name recognition. They might be the greatest, name on campus, faculty-wise. We don't know who they are. The programs you're sending it to won't be wowed by that name at the bottom. They want to be wowed by the information that's in the letter.
Thank you. We'll take the question from the back right there. So the question was, if the community service you have participated in is potentially politically controversial, should you mention that in your application? Was that what?
Like, not mention it, but like, if you put something down that obviously shows your faith or your side, that could be something that isn't someone else's, that you wouldn't want your personal statement, you don't want to put that in there as I used it. Is it going to be held against you, or is it going to be something that needs to be noticed, like, oh, she's got that?
So in other words, your community service is in a church setting, and you wonder if you should be listing that community service because it's in a church setting? Are we understanding that correctly? Is that how I'm getting that?
Yeah.
I think it's part of who you are. If you're just listing what you do to give back to your community, for Western U, we don't have an issue with that. I mean, it's.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say to not put it in there, but be prepared to discuss it in an interview setting. That's where you may have that discussion, and it may be then talked about. I think the concern that may happen is you don't want to have someone that is intolerant or might react. We've had some interviewers who really feel like they want to make the applicant sweat. They want to put them through their paces. We don't interview that way, and we try to get those interviewers to not. But a lot of times what they want to see is they want to see the thought process going on in your head. So if you do list something that, oh, well, I'm going to take the opposing opinion and see how well you defend your opinion. Are you going to change your mind? Are you going to waffle? That's where you may be asked those kind of questions, but it's not going to be a negative in terms of, oh, no, we don't take those kind of students.
No.
I mean, I'm working for a Jewish-sponsored institution, and our campus has the Jewish students and faculty are in the minority, and there's people from. It's like, we don't discriminate based on religious preference,
No.
religious beliefs.
Thank you.
Logistical question. I understand Touro's prerequisite courses can be completed at the time when you submit a FAFSA, but for some schools where it can be in progress, do you recommend sending an updated transcript after you completed that course, or wait if you've been admitted to the school to update the school?
So the question was if you have finished a course, if you have submitted your transcript before you finished a course, but you have finished it after, should you send the updated transcript?
Well, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. The expression on your face, just want to make sure that she was coming across. Okay. So just be cognizant of what each school is requiring. So for example, for Western U, you cannot have more than one science and one non-science in progress at the time of the application. So there's going to be small little details like that you need to pay attention to. Yes, you want to update those, but just be aware that it's important to have a bulk of those science courses, if not all of them, as up to date as possible at the time you submit it, because once it gets to a certain process and it gets to a committee, that committee may not know that you have now replaced a grade and gotten an A in a class that you got before. So just know what each institution, how their process works, so that if you have 3 or 4 science classes, and I'm just making this up, that your one is provide updated transcripts for. If your application has already gone to committee, it may not be feasible for them to get that information. So just know what the processes are for those schools and how they work. Just your homework.
Thank you.
So the average age for students entering PA school is 25 to 35. Do you consider age when it comes to clinical experience versus life experience? Like if somebody is older, obviously they have more clinical experience versus somebody who's just exiting college that has less clinical experience but still young.
So the question is, do you consider age when you're evaluating clinical experience?
Yeah, no, age doesn't really factor in at all. You're absolutely right in that some of the, being on this end of the spectrum, more mature applicants do much better in our interview process. They've got more background. They've got more life experience, information to pull from. So in a certain sense, it's an advantage to be an older applicant.
And I think I'd like to take that out of the clinical perspective as well. It's life. You've learned how to handle stress differently. You've gone through life experiences. So it's not just necessarily that you have a different kind of clinical experience to offer, but you have different reactionary things to your life that you have to offer that are going to be different than when you were younger.
Back there, please keep your question short.
So as far as clinical experience goes, do you care more about the amount of hours, or do you care about the level of experience, say EMT versus paramedics? Do you care that one person has 5,000 hours of EMT experiences, or would you prefer that applicant take a further step in immersing themselves into the field by going to the next level?
So the question is, do you care more about the number of clinical hours you have or the level of clinical hours?
I don't require the hours, so
Yeah, we don't require, and I would also say that both are important. That certainly, a significant amount of hours is going to show that type of dedication. If you do decide to advance, that's great. It's certainly not going to be a negative, but yeah, we see that quite a bit where someone may work as an EMT for 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to that point before they really decide, I do want to be a PA. They may have been thinking about it for 10 years, but finally got to the point in their life where they could then follow through with that. So it certainly isn't going to be looked down upon if that's what they did for the last 10 years and never progressed.
It depends on the person and what they've done.
Up there in the pink shirt. So the question was, is it harder for international students to get into the PA programs?
Well, that's sort of a double-edged question. In terms of admissions, no, that we don't factor whether you're a citizen or not a citizen. Whether you can get licensed and work in the country, that's a whole nother sort of a work visa issue. That doesn't really factor into our program. For us, the biggest factor is we require international students to prepay the entire cost of the program prior to starting. If you don't qualify for financial aid, it's tough to then afford to go to PA school.
Many PA programs have English proficiency, TOEFL or something like that you have to demonstrate. But other than that,
Yeah, that would be my recommendation is check all the programs and find out what their requirements are for international students. Some of them will have, U.S. hours requirements, some of them, financial aid requirements. And also check with, if you plan to work in a state, find out what requirements are to then get licensed and then practice.
because licensing is state dependent in scope of practice, so you need to look. The other thing is, for our program, you have to have a bachelor's degree or bachelor's degree equivalent from another country for the people who did not go to college in the United States.
And for that case, you'll need to have your transcripts. If you did go to a non-US accredited school, you'll need to have your transcripts evaluated, and that can be a timely process, so be cognizant of that as well. But we're the same. I mean, we accept international students. You just educate yourself on what you want to do and where you want to do it.
So the question was, if we have a certain specialty in mind, should we include that in our personal statement?
If that's what you want to talk about.
Yeah, sure.
If that's a really big deciding factor for you, if that's what you're wanting to exhibit to the admissions committee as to why you're choosing what you're choosing, that's purely up to you. Just make sure it stays focused on you and not the specialty.
If you're really looking at a certain specialty, then you may want to look at programs that may have that more in in their program. If you were to say that you want to be a cardiothoracic surgery PA, and you were and that was all in your thing, we probably would not invite you for an interview because you're not meeting our mission. And there are other programs that would be a better fit for you.
How would you suggest getting your clinical hours and experience without letting your coursework expire?
So the question was, how do you recommend that you finish your clinical hours without letting your grades suffer? Or
Without letting your coursework expire?
without letting your coursework expire?
For us, coursework doesn't expire. So, but that is, if it's something that you're focused on, you need to, as soon as you leave undergrad, get going. It's certainly, the longer you wait, the more concern it is about, starting back academically, and are you going to be prepared to do that?
It's a balancing act. You're going to know better than us as to how you're going to attain that. So you just have to work what's best for you so that, for one, you stay up on your academics, but you still get, and again, I don't require the hours, so, but that you're meeting both of those needs. You just have to find it.
I think there's two things you guys should really think about in terms of the academics and the clinical experience. The reasons for the academics are, can you be successful? And you need to be able to prove to yourself that you can be successful as well as us. But if you're not confident in your ability to be successful, you actually are putting barriers in your own way for success. So that's sometimes why also people will go back and take other classes so that they go, no, I can do this. I've learned how to study differently, and I can be successful. For the clinical hours, the reason for that, for a lot of programs, is this truly what you want to do? I mean, how do you know you want to take care of people unless you've gone out and done it? You know, you can read about it, you can see it on TV, but you got to go experience it. You got to know that people may yell at you, people may smell, people may, you're going to have to touch them. You're going to have to ask them very personal questions. And if you don't have that experience, if you don't challenge yourself to see what that's like, you may be one of those people that gets into it and then went, oh man, I've made a serious vocational error here. This is not the right thing for me. And by doing that, by waiting and then getting into PA school and then going, oh, I can't do this, and then you drop out, somebody else really, really wants to do that, and you've taken that slot. So it's not bad on your part, but really you want to know that this is it for you. You want to do this. And I think it's the question earlier about what is it, how do I know which one I want to do, is go check them out. But, you're going to work a lot of years. Do what you love doing.
We'll take one last question.
How do you view paid clinical experience versus volunteer clinical experience? I know it's hard to get a job in the medical field, so and for some of us who are going to school, volunteer clinical experience is kind of the only way we're going to be able to get clinical experience.
So the question was, how do you compare paid clinical experience versus volunteer clinical experience?
I mean, definitely paid experience is going to be viewed at a higher level, but we understand that as an undergrad, the reality of getting a paid experience is probably not going to happen. But certainly if you're then out of school, that's something that you want to try to get. It's going to look better, but we don't require hours, so we'll take shadowing, we'll take volunteering.
We look at both, but people who have paid experience, usually they can talk about things more. And I'll tell you, I have had a student who withdrew from the program, and she had volunteer hours, and I always ask a student if they're leaving the program, what do you think would have made a difference? He said, I think if I worked at a job and I paid and I actually had responsibilities, then I would have had a better sense of what I was going to have to do. And the issue for her was really making decisions about people's lives, and that she realized that she couldn't, that was too stressful for her. And so, thinking about it from that perspective.
Can we have a round of applause for our panelists today?